Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, or maybe she's just trying to make the jury think about, ventilators in general, because this predates, this was 2019 that this case was filed. But, Lisa, I'm just kind of thinking to myself, listening to her, if what they have in common is that Dr. Husel is their doctor, that could be hard for the defense to overcome.
Correct. Well, we also know that 20 other medical staff were fired subsequently, and so was he. So does that mean other doctors who were carrying and giving the wrong amount or the overdose amount that was causing these deaths? I don't know. So we're going to wait for that to unfold in order to find that out. But having a father who was on a ventilator, who was at his end of life, I can just say from a personal point of view, and anybody else, because this was after COVID, um, anybody that wants to see their loved one out of pain, just to dose them as much as possible with morphine and those type of things to kind of end the suffering makes perfect sense to me. Now, we're going to find out if this was the case or not. And I'm just going to sit back and watch and see the evidence unfold.
Oh, I'm just interested in what you just said. You said your father was on the ventilator after COVID?
Prior to COVID.
Prior to COVID. Okay, sorry.
He was on
I
prior to
misunderstood.
COVID. So
I'm
we
so
got
sorry,
to see
Lisa.
that. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think being on a ventilator, I think whenever I hear that, I know you can come off of them, but I've known people who had COVID and who have been on ventilators, and maybe were on ventilators more than once and they didn't come through. And going on a ventilator is incredibly scary. And there are times when these patients can become conscious while the ventilator is in, and they can try to take it out. So I'll be interested to see if we hear some testimony about things like that, because that's terrifying. Like, you basically, when you have a ventilator in, it's going down your windpipe. And so people, when they regain consciousness or if they are in pain, this is not a comfortable thing. And when you go on one, as you heard, sometimes you don't come off. Let's go back to Janet Grubb and listen to a little bit more of her opening statement and how she ended it. Lisa, you look at those, all of those people, these are 14 people who had families, more than likely, who loved them and who cared about them. And in many instances, and actually all of the instances, it sounds like the prosecution, or at least in some of them, we should say, didn't believe these people would have died otherwise, or else they wouldn't be pursuing this case. So what, as a law enforcement officer, are you, former law enforcement officer, are you looking to see in this case?
I would say that looking at the doses, because we know that the whole issue is two of them, at least, we know that they had settlements paid out for wrongful deaths, were given 200 micrograms of fentanyl. One died 16 minutes after, one died 6 minutes after. So there was a payout on those because they said they were overdosed. What I'd be looking at as the investigator is how much were they given prior to that? Because the body does build up a resistance to medications and morphines and opioids, et cetera. And you're not able to get out of pain anymore. And you need more and more in order to do that. So I would look at that. I would look at the entirety of the painkillers that were given while they were under the care of this doctor, and if that increase was needed.
It will be interesting to see how they present this and how it all kind of unfolds, and whether or not we do see exactly that. We're going to hear from defense attorney Jose Baez later in the show from his opening statement. So we'll bring that to you later, but we're going to take a look at some other things we have coming up here on the Law and Crime Trial Network. So stay with us while we take a break. You're watching the afternoon session. Lisa, what are your feelings on that?
I love how crafty Jose Baez is, that he was able to get that document. That's pretty amazing. That's a secret document. And yes, the word villain is the most important. Having a playbook and a contingency plan, it happens in all fields. But when you actually title somebody the villain versus potential guilty parties, using that terminology, we already know they're looking for a fall guy in order to save face, in order for them to be above the medical board standards, in order to get their prescriptions in the future. So, immediately they started changing their rules and regulations once he was fired, once he was suspended, saying we don't like the protocol that was set up and we need to fix it. But that's well after the fact. So they had a system in place, and he was doing what he was supposed to according to the system, and everything was transparent. I mean, everything from scanning the medicines from the nurses, because everything is documented. They know how much was taken, how much was given through the pharmaceutical pharmacy as well. So I think Jose is doing a great job.
And it would, you know, just so our viewers realize, it wouldn't be easy to do something like this. When you typically you have to go to the pharmacy and you have to put in the order, and everything is tracked and it's regulated. So this isn't something where you could just slip something to somebody. I mean, I guess that could happen, but not in a case like this, at least. So there would have been people aware of what was going on and whether or not things were going awry. Let's look at a little bit of how Jose Baez ended his opening statement. And yeah, Lisa, your thoughts?
One of the thoughts that I had is because there were 2 payouts on 2 wrongful deaths, and then there were 8 more that were filed, and there's a total of 19. So we know he's only being charged with 4 of the deaths, but 19 other cases. And we know the way class action lawsuits work. So if anybody died within a certain period of time under the care of Dr. Husel, you know, and you want to come forward, et cetera, and there's money to be made. So not to say that this is the exact case here, but I think they're going to be able to go through. They already were able to knock off 11 of them because they didn't have enough proof that he overdosed them and he did mercy killings. So I think it's just going to be a matter of taking each case individually, looking at the duration of the time that they were in his care, and looking at the succession of the dosing up until they passed away. Jose Baez said that these people were terminally ill. He made this statement. They were on their way out. Prosecution said that some of them were not. So we're not going to know until we actually see their health records in their cases.
Definitely. And we'll all be watching for that. We are going to take a quick break and have more to come, so stay with us. You're watching Law and Crime.